you doing? Mike here at the Custom Shop. And today we're going to design a guitar body. And I wanted to mention a couple of things before we move on to the body. One is, you may want to buy a neck for your very first build, because the neck is a ton of work. It's not that hard to go out and drop $75, $80 and buy a prefab neck, come with the frets on it, fingerboard on it, already shaped. May not have a nut, probably won't have any machines, but you're still going to work on it a lot even if you do that. For our purposes, we're going to say we're going to buy a neck. And that's why I designed that guitar neck last time like a Fender Strat neck, because those are easy to buy. That said, let's talk about designing a guitar body. We have to make a bunch of decisions. Again, what kind of pickups, how many pickups, what kind of controls, how many controls, do something cool, or are we just staying pretty standard? And since this is our first build with you guys, we're going to keep things pretty standard. 2 humbuckers, single volume, a single tone. We're going to have some switching for coil tapping and for running the pickups in parallel or series. So there'll be a couple little extra switches. But other than that, we're going to keep things pretty standard. We also have to keep in mind our ergonomics. Guitar has to be functional and it has to be comfortable. Form follows function, and very first thing is the guitar has to function. That means we have to be able to reach everything, we have to be able to carry it for, let's say, 2 hours at a shot, and we'd like it to fit in a regular guitar case. Cleaned up the neck design a little bit, and now I put in my 2 humbucking pickups between my bridge and my neck. I left a little bit of room here, and I left room here, and I left room here. Depending on what pickups you use, you can draw in whatever you like. I also wrote in the outline of a body blank, which is 13 inches this way by about 21 inches that way. That's plenty to accommodate a horn and all that stuff. We'll cut away a lot, but that gives me enough to work with. We have a giant cigar box at the moment. A body blank of 13 by 21 is plenty. Before I go any further, I want to lay out my control cavity. When I draw one of these out, I'd like to find a few points first. I'd like to find where I want my front peg, strap peg, where I want my tail peg, and usually that's about 39.5 inches from the end of the head. I also want to know where my controls are going to be, and since we know our scale length, where the bridge goes is a gimme. The shape is pretty much up to you, but for right now, the guitar we're designing is going to fit in a standard case. And what I'm doing now is I'm marking out with a dotted line where the wiring channel for the jack is going to go. And now I know my jack is going to come out right here. So I'm just going to draw in that little plate. Remember, you got to allow for screws. These plates are about 1.5 inches long to 2 inches long. Okay, so now I've sketched in the body, and you could do that any way you like, but I just found some points that I thought where the strap pegs ought to go, and I located that on the body blank outline that I drew here. Once I have my point here, and more or less a tail point, which I located about 39.5 inches from the head. 39.5 inches. Then I sketched in the body, and you'll need the eraser. I've also indicated where the route for the pickups and the controls are with this dotted line, and I left room for a screw hole here and here, and I might fudge around where exactly the volume and tone knobs go. I haven't totally worked that out yet, which is why I still have a pencil and I still have the eraser. So we have a couple of design elements to consider. This is a trem bridge, which means there is a spring cavity inside underneath the pickups. Right here I've indicated where the trim cavity is going to be on my profile side shot, side view. I also have indicated where the end of the front horn is. I put the peg in. The heel block, but I didn't include this lower horn here in that diagram. So now I know that my clearance between the bottom of the pickup and the top of the trim cavity is really small, like 3/16 of an inch at most. So that's why you do plans first before you cut anything. And we're going to need enough clearance for the pickups, and we're going to need enough clearance for the spring cavity. This is about 1/2 an inch. These got to go down 1 inch, and your whole body is only 1 3/4 inches thick. Some guitar bodies, you see, this is so thin it might as well be a veneer. We're also going to need to be able to put screws in here for the spring cavity to connect to the tone block under the trim bridge. This whole bridge here will rock up and down. We have to make sure that our plate is thick enough to lift the pickups out of the cavity and still have clearance here at the neck. This string has more clearance here than it has here. The body now is at an angle and not square to our center line, although our string line is square to our center line. At this point we're nearly finished. I've created a parts list from my design. Now I know exactly what I'm going to need to buy. We're going to need a 1 inch by 4 inch by 27.5 inch piece of wood for the neck, unless we're buying a neck. For body, we're going to need a 13 by, turns out, 20 inch piece of lumber that's 1 3/4 inches thick for the body. We're also going to need pickups, pots and caps, strap pegs, a bridge, a jack and a plate, cavity covers, and maybe binding if we're going to put binding around it. So we're ready to order parts. I'm going to put some measurements on the design just so I have them for reference. And if I wanted to, I could take another piece of banner paper, lay it over top, and trace out templates for the body, for the neck if I was going to make one. All that stuff I can generate from this blueprint right here. There's the whole thing ready to go. Now let's build it.